You know, of course, we all like to go out to eat or enjoy a beverage at our favorite watering hole, but every so often, and what happens when something goes terribly wrong at a bar or a restaurant and you wind up getting hurt? Attorney and resident gourmand David Aylor here to weigh in on that legal issue for us. Counselor, welcome back to the program. Let's talk about this because, you know, a restaurant, certainly a place you go, you try and have a meal, you enjoy yourself, but a lot can happen. They're not necessarily dangerous places, but it seems to me that people more and more these days are falling, they're getting hurt, they're getting overserved, perhaps food poisoning, all a lot of issues that can line up in a legal battle.
Right, exactly. You have so many different things that happen on accident, but ultimately can be found to be the fault of the bar or the restaurant. And that's really what we're talking about here is a liability issue.
Indeed. You notice those yellow slip and fall cones. They say, you know, a wet floor. That's got to be a big one that you receive complaints about all the time. So what, I guess if somebody is in a restaurant and this happens to them, or a restaurant, what do you want to do to protect yourself? Or if you're in a legal battle right now, what do you need to do in that situation?
Well, if you're on the end of the victim end, first thing you want to do is make sure it's been reported to either the manager or the owner. Sometimes you have situations that'll happen. Someone will call my office and say, hey, I got hurt at this location. And you say, well, did you report it? And they say, no. It's very difficult to go back then and prove that it actually happened there.
Right.
Beyond that, you want to seek medical treatment as soon as possible. If you fall down at a restaurant, don't go see the doctor for 3 days. Obviously, the argument will be, well, you got hurt doing something else.
Yeah.
How do we know it's even from this fall, even if you did in fact report it? So those are the two key things: is reporting it to the restaurant or the bar that you're in, and then of course immediately seeking medical assistance if needed.
You talked to me about the food poisoning issue a little bit. Is that something you can actually sue a restaurant over? I've never quite heard of that, but it seems like, you know, there's enough trauma going around that you could be held responsible for it if you're a restaurant.
Well, obviously it'd be more difficult to prove because you ingest things throughout the day, and to try to determine exactly what time period it happened may be an issue. However, if you are pretty specific with it, like let's say something occurs, you go to the emergency room that evening, you know exactly what you've had that day, perhaps you have receipts from it, that sort of thing, and you go back and you just talk to the restaurant about it. That's usually the best way to start. Sometimes they'll resolve it themselves, pay for the bills. Other times they may deny it. Then you have to make the decision, should you bring on a lawyer and go from there.
Have there been cases where someone sued a restaurant for food poisoning and they actually ended up winning?
Well, I mean, there's going to be types of cases where people bring all types of claims, whether they actually go ahead and sue the restaurant or they ultimately just settle with the restaurant's insurance coverage is two different things. More often than not, you see the insurance coverage kick in and it actually settle the case before it goes into litigation.
I understand. Okay, talk to me about bars a little bit, because people like to go, they like to ingest a little bit of alcohol. Sometimes things happen, people get into fights or little skirmishes, and that raises a lot of legal issues as well.
Right. One thing you see sometimes at bars is obviously when you get into sort of arguments, fights, things like that, and people end up getting injured because of another intentional act from someone else, meaning they got punched, hit with a bottle, chair, whatever it may be. Just think roadhouse.
Right.
Well, what they're going to go back and look at then from the standpoint of the person that was injured is, one, what role did they play in the altercation? But two, you're going to look at what the restaurant had in regards to security. Did they have the proper security to dissolve and diffuse those type of situations? And also, it's important to understand is whether or not that bar or restaurant has had these type of things happen before, where they should have had that security on alert. And then to go to alcohol, obviously you're going to look at how much alcohol was served. Was a person that struck or hurt the other person someone that was overserved? And that is all things that could happen within the bar or restaurant. Going outside of that, of course, we've heard of the dram shop laws. Basically, it's illegal in South Carolina to overserve a person. So then if a person is overserved, unfortunately gets behind the wheel, hurts someone else either in their car or in another vehicle or pedestrian, they're going to look back to that bar who overserved the person.
And say that they can be held responsible for that. So if someone does get hurt in a bar fight, can you go and sue that bar and sue them for not having enough security and protecting their customers?
Under certain circumstances, yes. Everything has to fall in line. And again, you want to look to what were the circumstances of the fight, and also within that bar or restaurant, would it be something that you could expect to happen? Have there been police reports of other calls and other skirmishes out there where they would need more security, or was this just an isolated incident?
And that's when you need to call a lawyer and get that research done. David Aylor, thank you for your time, sir. Do
Thanks
appreciate it as always, and stay safe out there, everybody. Much more Low Country Live after the break. Stay with us.
Trial Tuesday, brought to you by attorney David Aylor.